everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I am happy to be here on the first day of International Women's History Month to talk to you guys about computer science myths and lessons learned that I have encountered over my time studying, teaching, and working in the field of computer science. So today, what I'm going to go through is a little bit of an introduction about myself, my experiences, and then I'll go through the myths that I've encountered over the time that I've been working and studying in CS, lessons learned, and leave time for questions at the end. Of course, if you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to leave a comment and I will receive it and we'll answer it as we go along. So please don't feel like you have to wait for your questions towards the end. So a little bit about myself before we get started. My name is Samah Majadla. I have a bachelor's in computer science and art from Mount Holyoke College and a master's degree in computer science from Eastern Michigan University. I've worked in a variety of different roles in the world of computer science. I worked as a software developer, a project manager, a software educator, as a teacher in various different scopes at university for Girls Who Code, and I actually ran my own software engineering fellowship program in Detroit. And currently, I'm a product manager at VMware. What you see in this slide here is also just a little bit about my personal life. As you'll get to see in this presentation, a big emphasis is that there are no real limitations onto what you can do with computer science or who you need to be in order to be in the field of computer science. So some of the things I like to do in my free time are yoga. I like to make things like jewelry and art, and I like to do some photography as well. So I know some of you watching maybe now or maybe the recording in the future, some of you might be interested in applying and studying in universities in the United States and maybe working in the United States. I myself am an international student. I came to the United States in 2009, and this slide just covers a little bit of my timeline. So for the majority of my time in the United States, I was on an F1 visa. I studied for my bachelor's degree, and then following my bachelor's degree, I got OPT, which authorizes you to work for a few years. So I worked for a few years and then went back to school for my master's, and then following my master's degree also worked again. I had applied for a work visa 3 times. I was unsuccessful the first 2 times as it is a lottery system. And the 3rd time I applied last year, I was successful. So if anyone watching now has any questions about the experience applying for colleges in the United States or working in the US or anything to do with visas, feel free to ask and I'm happy to go into this further. But without further ado, I'm going to go into some myths that throughout my experience, and I want to emphasize that this is from the perspective of being a woman, an underrepresented minority in the field of computer science, a lot of the things we hear and feel. So these are just my experiences, and there are probably many more myths and different myths that I'm sure maybe you will all encounter in your time in the field. So the first myth I want to talk about is that this idea that computer science is all programming, that if you study computer science, all you're going to be able to do is program in front of a computer and that's it. And actually, that is not true at all. Programming is a tool for us to use in computer science. It's a very important one, but it is not the entirety of computer science. Programming is just delivering instructions to a machine. And there are many surrounding topics that are important and fun to understand and study in computer science. So what you see here is just a short list of some areas that you can focus in computer science. And if you do a degree, an undergraduate or a higher level degree in computer science, you will likely touch on a lot of these subjects. And yeah, you'll probably use programming in some capacity in most all of these, but I really want to emphasize that it's just a tool, that you can use programming to achieve different things and help you research and innovate, develop ideas and theories, but it is not the only thing that is computer science. Related to that, the second myth I want to focus on is this idea that if I do study computer science, even if I study other aspects within it, that when I graduate, the only thing that I'm going to be able to do is to become a software developer for a tech company. And I want to take you through some examples of things you can do and some examples of women in the tech field who are not just software developers for a tech company. The first person I'm going to show you is Katie Booman, and she is the first person who was able to use an algorithm to generate an image of a black hole. So she used, I believe, machine learning, and she is in the field of astronomy and is doing great things in that field. So you can use your programming and computer science knowledge to go into astronomy if you like, and it's not limited to just tech companies and software development. You can also, if you are so inclined, be an artist. So this is a museum in Japan called Team Lab, and they do interactive art exhibits, and most all of them are programmatically done. So they are exhibits that change with the interaction from humans, and they're quite beautiful, and is another example of something you can do with computer science without necessarily working for Apple or Google or Facebook or any of those companies. Oh. Let's try reloading. All right, well, there's an image here of Stacy Brown Philpott. I am apologizing for it not showing up, but you don't, this is expressing the myth in a different way. Another way that this myth could be interpreted is that to be in tech, the only viable way is through software development, and that's also not true. Stacy Brown Philpott is a businesswoman, so you can go into tech and be in the tech field from a business aspect if you desire. It doesn't necessarily have to be through the technical standpoint. You can also help people with computer science. A lot of these big companies and a lot of the software development positions we see and we hear about are all about making things for the consumers, making things for big corporations and pushing forward the capitalist system. But you can do things that are advocating for people, for the health and the safety of people. Eva Galperin here is, she is the Director of Cybersecurity at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and she focuses on helping victims of abuse and eradicating stalkerware. So what stalkerware is spyware that's used for domestic abuse. And so she's really using her knowledge and influence in the sphere of technology and computer science to really help people. And that is, of course, an avenue that you can take. Or you might just want to be an inventor and have fun with it. This is Simone Geertz. She is an awesome, awesome woman in the field of technology, and she makes robotics accessible and fun to her audience. She calls herself, and excuse my language, she calls herself the queen of shitty robots. And I just want to play this video real quickly for you all to see some examples of her robotic projects and the fun you can have with it. So that was just a short example of Simone Geertz's work, and I wanted to just share these various examples of fields you can go into through computer science that are not necessarily limited to software development in tech companies. And by no means are the options that you can go into limited to what I just showed you. Absolutely any field that you can think of is amplified by computer science, and you can really use the skills you learn to push forward and innovate in absolutely any field you desire. So there's no limits to how you can apply the knowledge you learn and the skills you gain in the field of computer science. The next myth that I would like to discuss is this idea that you have to be good at math to go into computer science. And I'm going to let you in on a little fact about myself. In my bachelor's degree, I actually only took one math class. And that math class I got to take pass fail. So I could get an A, I could get a B, a C, or a D, anything 60% and above, and still pass and continue on in my computer science degree. So I didn't have a heavy focus in math in my undergraduate degree, and I still graduated with that computer science certificate. So you don't have to be good at math. You don't have to do much math at all if you don't want to. But if you want to and you are good at math, you can certainly utilize it and go forward in your computer science degree with that helping you. If you want to go into graphics or video game design or things that are heavily reliant on linear algebra, it might be helpful for you to be good at math, but it's not a necessary skill to have. A lot of computer science degrees will have you take calculus and calculus 2 and linear algebra and discrete math, and those are very helpful and good to have in your back pocket, but by no means is it a limitation if you do not like math or if you're not good at math that you have no place in the industry. You can choose to go into fields that are more math heavy or less math heavy, and it has nothing to do inherently with being good at computer science. The fourth myth that I want to talk about, and I see this a lot in my younger students when I was teaching, is this idea that computer science is for boys or that it's nerdy, it's not a cool thing to do. And that's not necessarily true at all. In fact, we see a lot in the history of computer science that women were at the foundation of it. And I'm just going to go through a few slides to talk about why we might think that computer science is just for boys or just for nerds. Before that, I just want to look at this chart to look at a little bit of history. This chart is talking about the percentage of bachelor's degrees given to women in the United States. It's separated out by major, and it goes through time from 1970 to 2012. And the percentages we can see here on the left. And I'm just going to focus on the bottom part of this graph where we talk about computer science and engineering. And what you can see actually in the computer science line, the trend actually hits a peak in the 1980s with over 30%, close to 40% of the computer science degrees were given to women in computer science. And so it just shows you that many women were studying computer science, and the decline we see over time. And why that decline is there, this is another graphic talking about younger girls, where we see younger girls are interested in computing programs, but as they get older and they become teenagers and start to go to college, they lose interest. And I just want to talk about why we might see that interest decline, why we might be socialized to think that computer science and technology is not for girls. These are advertisements. I'm not certain what decade these are from, but what you can see is that the boys and the men are very involved in the technology and the computers. They are the ones with the hands-on, and the woman is often just the bystander. She's just looking pretty, looking at the machine, but she's not really involved in it. And when the advertisement is talking about using a machine, they're referring to the dad, the father, and it's the boy that's asking, it's not a daughter. So these are just some ways that advertisement might impact us into believing that computer science is for boys. Or even in popular culture, in movies and in TV shows, a lot of the computer science and the programming that we see, most of the time is done by men. And in fact, this is not really representative of the history of computer science. It might be why we are socialized to believe that women are not part of the computer science field. Well, what I'm going through right now is just some snippets, some screenshots from various Wikipedia pages of women computer scientists who are at the forefront of their fields. And we have, hopefully this is showing you that we have simply just become socialized to believe that computer science is for boys or nerds by the images we see in popular media, in advertisement around us. We are led to believe that we have no place in computer science, but that is beyond not true. The fifth myth that I would like to discuss with you all is that programming, if you decide to go into a field that involves heavy programming, means that you have to be in front of a computer all day. And this image on the left is an example of just one day of work a few years ago for myself. And hopefully it just is there to illustrate for you that, yes, you might have some times while you're programming that you're in front of a computer, but a lot of other times you're working through problems with teammates, you're discussing different scenarios, you're drawing diagrams, you're working through problems together. And it is not, in fact, being in front of a computer all day. You can choose to work at a company where that's more the emphasis, less teamwork, more individual work. And that's fine if that's what you choose to do, but there is no requirement that to be a programmer, you have to be in front of a computer all day. And along with that, the sixth myth that I want to talk about is this idea that coding is not a creative habit or hobby. And we are all, I think, mostly familiar with this image on the left where you have two sides to your brain. The left is very logical and pragmatic. It's the math, it's the science. And the right side of your brain is artistic and creative. And that actually is not really how our brains work. And beyond it just being not how our brains work, things like computer science are very creative. You have no limitations to how you solve a problem other than a few simple rules of the language or tool you're using. And I'm just going to show you a few different takes on this. So Minecraft is a video game that maybe a lot of us are familiar with. Minecraft can also be used for educative purposes. You can modify the Minecraft gameplay with different programming languages. And Deirdre Kornstrom, who is the general manager of Minecraft Education, said, though so many don't realize it, coding is in fact one of the most creative activities a student can do, building something with no limitations but his or her own creativity. And I find this to be very, very true because with programming, you can create anything you want with the limited skills you might have or the limited technology and be bound by nothing but that. And you can really innovate in ways that people would have never imagined with technology and coding. You can also create art with programming. So if coding and the ways you can solve problems you do not find to be creative, that's fine. You can actually create artistic pieces programmatically. So all three of these art pieces were generated through a program. And Maria Claw, who she was the 5th president of Harvey Mudd College, and she was actually previously the dean of School of Engineering and Applied Science at Princeton University. She was in our previous slide of the women in computer science. She says that coding is today's language of creativity. All our children deserve a chance to become creators instead of consumers of computer science. And when you think about it, kids growing up today, sometimes in elementary school, are learning the same things that I learned in college. And it's really empowering them to be able to be creative and to solve problems in ways that we might not think of in our perspective, but they have a fresh set of eyes that maybe can see things in a different way. And so with programming, really, like Deirdre Kornstrom said, the only limitation you have is your creativity and how you choose to apply the skills of programming to help the people that might not have access to assistance or any problems that we as a society face today. You can solve a lot of those problems by just using the tools of programming that we have in front of us. The 7th myth that I would like to talk about, and I believe this is our last myth before going on to lessons learned, is that coding is not collaborative. A lot of the times we see, like in the example of popular media images that I showed a little bit ago, a lot of the images we saw were of one person sitting in front of a computer. It's a dark room, it's a dark screen, or maybe you've seen images like this where it's a cubicle farm and you're separated from all your other coworkers. A lot of these images give us the thought that coding is not collaborative, that it is something you do on your own and you don't really talk or work with anyone else. And that as well is not true. So unfortunately, I can't show you the faces of these people, but these are all images of different work settings that I have been a part of. And they're all examples of my coworkers and I working together to solve problems. In the world of computer science, there is a methodology called the Agile methodology, And it really encourages certain habits and ways of working. One of them is called paired programming, where to solve a problem, you're actually working with another human on that same problem, on the same computer. And there is another concept in the Agile methodology called mobbing, where you work with a group of people on the same problem. So what you see here in the right two images are examples of mobbing, where there's a group of people working on one problem, and sometimes a dog. And on the left, you have an example of pairing, where it's two people working on the same problem, trying to solve it. So if you are more inclined and better suited to an environment where you are coding on your own, that's completely reasonable. That's valid if that's what you choose to do. And you can find companies where that is more of the environment that they foster. But if you want to work with humans and you want more interactions and you want problem solving to be a joint activity and not a solo activity, you can also find companies where that is a value that they hold. A lot of modern companies are adopting the Agile mindset and using paired programming and a lot of collaboration. So those were just some of the myths that I encountered across my time in the computer science field. And I would encourage you, if you have heard of or experienced other myths, to leave a comment and just share your experiences as well. And now I'd like to go into some of the lessons that I've learned over the years in the computer science field. And these lessons are by no means limited to the computer science field, but it is a lot of these are things that I felt very heavily, and I know a lot of my my peers and my colleagues who are also women were feeling throughout their time as well. So the first lesson that I learned is to try, even if you don't feel ready, even if I don't feel ready. We talk a lot about, in the computer science world, especially as it relates to women, we talk a lot about imposter syndrome, where we are in the field, maybe we have a job or we're in school, but we still don't feel like we belong there, that we don't know enough, that we're really just faking it, and it's only a matter of time until people figure out that we don't belong in this space. And this imposter syndrome is illustrated here on the left, where we feel that what we know, the information and knowledge that we have and the skills that we've gained are just a subset of what other people know. And that's really not the reality. The reality is more what's happening on the right side, where what you know overlaps with what a lot of other people know, but it also is not a smaller portion of what other people know. We all go around thinking that we know a lot less than other people, but that's not true at all. We all have our unique experiences and life journeys that really give us a unique perspective that others will not have access to. And this comes up a lot when you're applying to jobs or to internships or conferences or schools. There have been studies that have shown that men are more likely to apply for jobs if they don't meet all of the qualifications, all of the requirements of that job, as compared to women. And I would like to encourage you all, if you come across a job posting or an internship posting or whatever you're applying to, where you feel that you don't have all of the criteria that they have listed out to get it, to apply anyway. Just try, because the worst thing that can happen is that they don't reach back out to you. But they might reach out to you and you might get an interview or more. And so even if you don't feel like you are 100% confident in your abilities, you should still try, because some people might see your potential without you even realizing it at that point. The second lesson that I learned in my time in the computer science field is that the people that you meet throughout your education, throughout your work life, they are just as important as the skills you are learning. So the people that you meet, they're going to help you find new opportunities, new interests, and new paths on your journey. And not only are they there to support you, you can also learn from them. And so keeping these connections, what we call networking a lot of the time, keeping these connections alive is very important, because especially in an industry like this, a lot of the times people will support you in moving into new opportunities. If you have friends who you studied with, I hope that you do not look at them as competition, and instead as a community that will help and support you throughout your career and your education. And so how can you meet these people and how can you maintain relationships with them? School is one way, conferences are another way, and just make sure to really advocate for the people you meet as well as yourself. And we'll go into the self-advocacy a little later, so we'll loop around back to this. A way to help you maintain those relationships is through communication. And one thing that I have learned is that communication is at the core of everything we do. So to be successful, and this is in general in life, but applies heavily to the computer science field, to be successful, you need to know how to communicate. And this is something that I think a lot of people are unaware that if they have it, it is a skill that will really help them. But if you are applying for a job and the job is between you and someone else who has the exact same technical skills, maybe they even have more technical skills, but you know how to communicate and they don't, you have a better chance, because I truly believe that you can teach someone technology, you can teach someone a skill, but you can't really teach someone how to communicate very differently than they already inherently do. You can't teach someone the basic kindergarten skills of sharing. So if you really work on communication, you can get better, but it really is very important to know how to discuss ideas, to know how to work through a problem with a coworker, or in the future, if you get to a point like this, to talk to leadership, to people above you, executives, and to know how to do it in a way that your message is clear and understandable to every audience that you're presenting to. The next lesson, the big lesson I learned, is that learning is not linear and success is not linear. We may start on a path and think it's a very straightforward path, and then see that it's not for us. Maybe we don't enjoy it in the way we had anticipated. Maybe it just isn't the right time for us to be going down that path, and that's okay. It's okay to start something new and to change your mind, and it's also okay to fail. In fact, I think failing is one of the most important tools in learning that we have. Failure really can be used as a teacher, and if you are able to do that, then you have a very good skill that will really help you throughout your life. John Maxwell has a quote that I really like, and it is to fail often, fail fast, and to fail forward. So to use your failure as something that will push you forward as opposed to really bringing you down. Another lesson that I learned, and this is a hard one to really put into practice, is to focus on your own path and not your colleagues, not your peers, not your fellow students, not their paths. A lot of the times, especially in educational settings, we see other people doing things faster or just understanding a concept a little bit quicker, and we take this on a reflection on us. So when I was in my undergraduate degree, I noticed that I took a lot of time to study and I took a lot of time to work through problems, and it felt like my fellow students were not doing the same. They were just able to get it kind of quickly and do the problems and the homework without really working as hard as I did. And it was a mistake to look at other people and think they knew more because they were doing it quicker. There were things that I understood very inherently that they didn't, but I didn't see their time and commitment in working on it because it was just natural for me and I didn't feel a need to look at others. But when I'm bad at something, that's when you start to compare yourself negatively towards others. And that's not helpful. And another thing to keep in mind here is that what you see is really the surface level. You might see someone be very quickly appearing to understand something, but you have years and years of of practice and commitment to that field or that practice that is backing them up in the current moment. So others' confidence is really not an indication of their superiority. And there's also no timeline. So you might start something years after someone else starts it, and that's fine. Your path is your own and your journey is only your own. And it's much more beneficial to focus on where you're going than why you're not at the same pace as everyone else. And the last lesson I learned, and this might be one of the most important lessons I learned, is to advocate for yourself. And no one in your life really is going to advocate for yourself, for you, as you can advocate for yourself. And what this looks like is a variety of different things. So it is about asking questions when you have a question, not feeling like it is not okay to say that you don't know something. It is about maintaining that community, that network of people. So we spoke about this earlier, that the people you meet are important as the skills. So by keeping them in your life and knowing when to rely on them and to ask for help, that is a form of self-advocacy. One thing that I think is very important in this regard is when you have an interest in absolutely anything, to let that interest be known. So in my first job, I realized pretty quickly that I didn't really like being a software developer as a full-time position when I did not have control over what I was working on and what the end impact of it was. So I started letting everyone know as soon as I realized that I would like to try to be a project manager. When there is an opportunity, I would please like to PM. And I told everyone very frequently, because when that opportunity comes up, I want them to think of me. And that did happen. When an opportunity came up for a new PM, immediately what people had in their mind was, oh, Samah has been asking for this opportunity. Well, let's give it to her. Let's see if she can meet the role. And so by advocating for yourself and letting what you're interested in be known, when that is an opportunity, hopefully people will then think of you and come to you. So really ask for help, ask questions, and really share your intentions and your path and your desires with those around you who are able to amplify and support you. So we actually went through this pretty quickly. I had 7 myths and these 6 lessons learned prepared. So I don't have much else to share with you, but I'm happy to take questions at this point if there are any. And if there are not, then I will end the presentation here. All right. So it looks like we don't have any questions. So thank you all for your time, and thank you to the American Center in Moscow for hosting this. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you go forth in the field of computer science and follow your dreams. Thank you.